thank you all for spending the first of our 3 days together as part of this symposium. I'm really excited to see the growth of the community, to see how we've all come together towards a common mission, and to see how we've actually, as a community, have brought together so many different people from so many different places, all working towards a common mission to improve health. It's interesting actually listening to that last panel. There's so many details, so many technical aspects that it's easy for us to sometimes lose sight of why we're here and what we're doing. So I thought, to conclude, I'd share with you why this is significant and important to me. So when I was a kid, I used to collect baseball cards. I loved collecting baseball cards. For those of you who, show of hands, how many people know what a baseball card is? Most people know what a baseball card is. What I'm showing you on the screen right there is 1987 Topps baseball cards. So for the couple that didn't have a hand, it's this little piece of cardboard. It's like 2.5 inches by 1.5 inches. Piece of cardboard that has a picture of a baseball player on the front. And on the back, it's got some interesting information. When I was a kid, I collected these things and I bought tons and tons and tons of packs, and my parents put up with the fact that I had boxes and boxes and boxes of these cards, and now my wife puts up with the fact that I still have boxes and boxes and boxes of these things. You know, I grew up in Connecticut and I was a Boston Red Sox fan. I was always excited when I could get a Boston Red Sox player, and it didn't matter that, you know, the stars at the time were Roger Clemens and Wade Boggs, and I'd get somebody like Rich Gedman, for those who remember. The thing is, a lot of people that collected baseball cards, there was reasons why people collected cards. So certainly during the late 80s, collecting baseball cards actually became something to collect because they had financial value. So this card right here, this Barry Bonds rookie card, this was hot stuff in 1987. This card was worth $3. Okay? We're now in 2017. You know how much this card is worth? $3. You can see why I am not doing this for high finance. A lot of kids would also put them on their bicycles and let them be toys to play with. Some of them, like me, I like to collect my favorite players. Some people just like to have something to collect. The thing that I liked most about baseball cards actually wasn't the front. It wasn't the picture of the player, the cool logo, the name. It wasn't the cool wooden background of these cards, although they're pretty epic. It was actually the back of the baseball card. And I'm showing you here those same cards on the back, here with my Rich Gedman card that still has the gum stain from that horrible piece of stale gum that came in every pack of baseball cards. But what I want to show you is why I got excited by the back of a baseball card. See, on the front, you'd see that it was Barry Bonds, the rookie card. And for those of you who don't know, Barry Bonds was a good player throughout the 80s and 90s and 2000s. In fact, is currently Major League Baseball's all-time home run hitter. And on the back of his baseball card, you could see that this was his rookie card. He only had a little bit of data that was telling about what he did during the minor leagues. And because he didn't have much data, the Topps baseball card company had to actually fill in the gap with an anecdote. So for Barry Bonds, his anecdote was he majored in criminal justice at Arizona State. So I guess Barry Bonds must really know right from wrong. After all, it's the data on the baseball card. Now, what the thing was really cool about baseball cards, too, was baseball cards provided predictions. You can see here the Bo Jackson rookie card said he was going to be a future star. And you'd get these cards, and they would actually say that they were a future star, and you try to figure out, why the heck is this guy going to be the future star? And what I was always impressed by was it wasn't because you could look at him, and he looks like a pretty buff dude, but it was always the data. There was something behind the data that told you that this guy was going to be a future star. And in this case, it was pretty interesting because he's a young player. He doesn't even have much data to show for, but we can see that oh, by the way, Bo Jackson also won the Heisman Trophy in football, so probably a decent athlete. What I most liked about baseball cards was the back of the data, or the back of the card, because of how much objective data it told me about an individual. So I can show you just a piece of the front of a Nolan Ryan baseball card. We like to call him Uncle Nolan. I don't know that he called me nephew Patrick, but he should. What you see on the back of this baseball card is a rich amount of data. So Nolan Ryan, this baseball card shows you, he was number 757, person ID 757 in this data set, and his position was pitcher. And we have data on Nolan Ryan going all the way back to 1966. And you could see he started his career with the New York Mets. He then played for the Angels and then the Astros. And for every one of those years, we had a lot of objective data about how well Nolan Ryan was at pitching a baseball. We could see how many games he pitched, how many innings. We saw how many games he won and how many he lost, how many runs he gave up, how many strikeouts he had. You could see that, for example, in italics, you could see some years Nolan Ryan was the best pitcher in all of baseball in striking out batters. But those same years, he was also the pitcher who walked the most batters. You could see all of these sort of abbreviated statistics from the objective data about this individual. You could see that, for example, in 1973, Nolan Ryan pitched 26 complete games. Now, some of you are probably looking at that and say, well, actually, what I just see is a number. I see the number 26 and then the letters CG. There's no legend to this data set that tells me it's complete games. There's no context to know if 26 is a big number or a small number. But as a kid, I spent hours and days sifting through boxes of baseball cards, reading the objective data, because what I found most compelling about this was the data told me a story. I felt like I could experience Nolan Ryan's career by looking at this data to realize that, holy crap, 26 complete games. For those of you who watch baseball now, this column has been removed from the baseball card because no pitchers throw complete games anymore. You could learn a lot just by the objective data about a baseball card. And while everybody else liked to collect these and look at them, I just really found it fascinating that you could tell a story based on data by itself. You also could see that Uncle Nolan was 6'2", he was 210 pounds. He threw and bat right, he was drafted. You could see when he was born. Some might call those demographics. So the thing is, it's amazing that we think about that as a boy, I'd collect baseball cards because I was interested in data telling a story. And yet, what we are trying to do is tell stories about patients and try to use data to figure out what the story is so that we can actually improve that person's life, so that I can see what's happened in the past and hopefully try to figure out what's going to happen in the future. So what would it look like if each of us weren't baseball players, but we had a person card, and we could tell our lives of our health based on the data that are captured in all these systems we're talking about? Maybe it would look something like this. So imagine you all had a card, and that card could tell you that you are a person, but you're not a first baseman or a shortstop or a catcher. You're a father, you're a son, you're a daughter, you're a friend. And what kind of data would you be potentially interested in? Well, you might want to know information over time to see how your health has changed. You might want to simply just know, how much data do we actually have about you as an individual? We might be interested in how many visits has a person have? What diseases have they been diagnosed with? What procedures have been administered? What drugs they've been on? We might be interested in the day's supply of a particular drug, and we might be interested in thinking about a person's health experience from the vantage point of some moment in time when their health has particularly changed. Maybe it's the time that they start an antidepressant. What was that patient's story before they had to start an antidepressant? How has it changed after they've had an antidepressant? Now, what kind of information objectively could we look at? Well, we could think about, for example, the treatment pathway for a given individual. You know, George showed some pretty cool pictures last year, but really we're talking about an individual making individual choices about their care. So maybe my person card says that I had to start on sertraline, switch over to venlafaxine, still needed to take bupropion, eventually had to get to trazodone, and it still was seeking care for my depression. Now, we might be interested, given that we have all of this data, that we might also be able to use the data to predict the future. So maybe I could actually understand, on the basis of this data, what's the probability that an event is going to happen in the future. And of course, I might be interested in sharing my demographics about height and weight and age and gender. Now, the thing is, I'm not trying to popularize health data. I'm trying to say that data can tell us a story. And all too often, we get caught up on, are we talking about the OMOP CDM? Are we talking about FHIR interoperability standards? But really what we're talking about is patients and patient stories and how we can make a difference in their lives. And maybe if we thought about our own lives in terms of what would the story that our data would be telling, that would help us have some context for how other patients' stories could also be told. Now, many of you know from coming to prior events that my father, Patrick Ryan, has come to every Odyssey event as well. Some of you have confused him for me. I'm not sure who that offends more. And many of you know that he is a computer scientist and engineer, and while we work in different industries, there's a lot more commonality to the work that we do than difference. One thing most of you probably don't know is about my mother. My mother is an extremely talented artist, and she paints amazing impressionist paintings and experiments with various designs, and made me appreciate that while science is good and math is good, art is also important and can be appreciated too. My mother is actually here today, so thank you, Mom, for everything. So sometimes when I was growing up, I would travel with my father on a business trip, and sometimes my mom would come along, and oftentimes we'd try to take an opportunity to go to an art museum and check it out. And fast forward from 1987 to 1993, and my mom and I found ourselves in Montreal at the Museum of Contemporary Art in Montreal, Canada. And there was a special art exhibit by an artist named Antony Gormley. And the art exhibit was called Field. And it was unlike anything I've ever experienced in my life. You walked into a room, or attempted to walk into a room, but you couldn't. Because as you walked to the front of the room, what you were confronted with was little people. Little people staring at you. Little people made of clay just staring at you. Lots of little people. Hundreds and thousands of little people. There was rooms and rooms of little people just staring at you. And what was, my mom and I, we stood at this exhibit. I would say without exaggeration, we certainly, for the first moment, stood there for an hour, just gobsmacked with what this did to us. Because you stood there and you saw all of these faces looking back at you. And what you saw in front of you was a population, a world. But you also saw each and every face. And each and every face made you experience a story. So you would look at an individual face and go, I wonder what his story was, or is going to be in the future. And there were people, there were small people and big people, there were fat people, there were light people and dark people. There was a population and a world out there, but it was a world made up of people. So I'm using PowerPoint to convey art. That is not much of an experience. And I wish I could get Antony Gormley to come here and give you this experience. The best instead I can do is my wife and my daughter Catherine and I each made our own little people. Oh, and I lost my head. Wherever Nicole is, this is mini-me. I lost the head all the way down. Thank you, George. My people have a story. My family has a story, and everybody has a story. And what was interesting was that it's amazing how much you could conjure up a story just by looking at a given individual. Because all I'm really seeing is I've got height and width and maybe color. But there's so much more underneath that exterior that you can't see, that your mind fills up with imagination of what's going on with this person. But there's no data behind there. This is just an experience. Imagine being in a room with 350,000 of these people in an experience you could try to get, and yet pretty much you're just letting your mind guess at what those experiences are. I want to fast forward, that was 1993. I want to fast forward to 2015. I was visiting the MoMA in New York. And there was this little crowd right around a corner on the third floor, and they were all staring at this particular painting. This painting. It's a painting by Francois Maura. And this painting, I am again not doing it justice. I'm showing you a PowerPoint slide of a piece of art. But there was a crowd gathered around it, just captivated, looking at the vibrance of these colors and trying to understand, what did the artist have in mind? What was the artist doing? What is he trying to tell me? And what am I supposed to experience from being next to this piece of art? Now I want to read you, if I can find it. I want to read you what the artist actually had to say about this piece of art. First of all, the title. Random distribution of 40,000 squares using the odd and even numbers of a telephone directory. It's a painting from 1960, and it says, after the artist divided the canvas into 40,000 squares, his wife and son read the numbers of the phone book out loud, which he moved across the canvas, marking a square with every even number and skipping a square for each odd number. He then colored the marked squares blue and the blank ones red. He used data, random data, to give people an experience that I can say captivated me, and I stared at this painting for quite a lot of time. Now, Francois Maura was a really interesting artist, so much so that I want to show you all something. This is a short video about Francois Maura and his art process. And what I want you to think about is this artist and how he's trying to communicate and convey information. I'm showing you an artist talking about art, but I want you to be thinking about why we're all here together. Oh, hold on. Stop. There it is. Actually, it's going to be quite funny that I needed audio for this. Oh. Well, how many people here speak French fluently? Like two? Okay, well, we're going mute because he's speaking French anyway. Please read the subtitles. Usually an artist will start a painting by choosing a brush. He will then choose a certain type of paint. Just to paint one brush stroke or layer like this or like that, he needs to make 20 arbitrary decisions. I only need to make 1 or 2 decisions. There is no genius here, I promise. All my work is about doing as little as possible and making the fewest possible arbitrary decisions. This is why, for example, I choose to work with a square. There is only one decision, one side of the square. With a rectangle, you have to make 2 decisions. As such, this work here is amazing because it's all white. There are 2 rhythms here, playing at 2 different tempos. Programmed so that they occur at the same time, but then separate before coming together again. I don't want to have to choose. I put a thing here or another thing there. And to make them random, I follow the order of pi. The pi number has no other use for me other than to prove that I haven't put 2 red neons here and 2 blue ones there just because it's nicer. 14159265 is the infinite part of pi. What I really like about this is that there's a very basic manipulations, the paper. Just by giving some rules to a fabricator, he can fabricate the piece without me having to even see it. So the piece is made with a minimal amount of decisions. I love the precision of this wall. This wall comes across like something very serious. And then finally, it's only monsters scattered in places randomly. When I first started working on it, I absolutely didn't think that I would end up with such a variety of shapes. This is what is so amazing. One could, for example, in a waiting room, just sit there looking at it and have fun inventing all sorts of stories. All right, so why did I show you that? What if I could help people get the value of objective data, but the experience of art so that people remember and never forget it? And what if we could take the ideas of objective data and the experience and make something that as a community would be much greater than anything that any individual could do by themselves? And so, while with all respect to what Holly and Catherine and I were able to put together, I'm not sure that that is sufficient. But what I thought might be really cool would be if we could actually use patient-level data, or at least a simulated version thereon, to actually try to see if as a community we could have a similar type of experience. What if we could create little people? But not create little people just from a piece of clay, but create people out of their data. Because every person's data is unique, every person's data tells a different story, and if we could actually have data, we might be able to appreciate and experience what we're trying to accomplish in a broader way. What I'm showing you there is a person drawn by data. You're seeing the image of an individual there, but you're seeing a whole bunch of dots, different colors and different shapes. And those dots and shapes are actually drawn from an OMOP common data model. That is a person made of data. Looks kind of something like that. Would you guys do me a favor? Would you take a look under your seats? Be careful. You'll find a surprise for yourself. Now, as you're doing this, I want you to take a moment. You've got a piece of paper in front of you that has 2 sides. There's a side that I want you to try to experience a patient's story. It's the side that's showing you a person, it's showing you their data in some sort of a way that I hope you start to resonate and experience that patient. On the other side, I'm showing you the objective data about this individual. I'm showing you what it would look like if we had a health card for that individual. In this room, there are 437 of you. Each and every one of you has a different patient. I want you guys to take stock of your individual. I want you to take a second to read the data, to look at the picture, to think about this patient's journey, and to think about what it makes you experience. Take a second.
Le premier tableau, je crois que je vous ai vendu, c'était à
French.
travers...
Okay. You feel like you've at least experienced part of the experience of your individual? You are a person. This is a person's life represented in data and represented experience, simulated nonetheless. But this could be a real person. This could be you. This could be your loved ones. This could be a friend. It could be someone else in your family. Or it could be the people that we are trying to serve in this community by trying to figure out a way to take their data and improve their health by using this data to generate evidence that could actually be useful for them. But that's not going to happen if we each work by ourselves, and it's not going to happen if we're all just sitting here staring at an individual. What we need to do is come together as a community. So what I'd like to ask you all to do is please stand up and hold up your person. Can I do a screen, please, Oscar? Hold them up. Oscar, you getting, did I lose my? What's that? Did I lose power? Does that matter? Untake that. It's plugged in. Oh, duplicate. All right, keep holding, please. I want you to experience the community. You're each different, you're each unique, you're each important, you each deserve good clinical care, and you each have a responsibility to contribute to the rest of your community. All right, now I want everybody to sit down, and I want everybody with a green piece of paper to stay standing and hold yourself up. If you're a green, stand up. Okay, if you are a white, I want you to stay seated, but I want you to just hold it in front of you. You represent a cohort of patients who have depression and have initiated an antidepressant. Those of you who are green have had a suicidal thought or behavior in the next year. This is what an incidence is. 3% of you are going to experience something adverse. This is not a PowerPoint slide. This is not George talking about statistical models. This is people. These are people's lives, and we have an opportunity to do something about these people's lives. We might be able to identify who these green people are and do something about it. Okay. Now, I want everyone to look at the back of their card. Please stay standing. I want everybody to look at the back of the card. I want you to look at your probability, the predicted probability of whether or not you were an event. Jenna presented that we might be able to predict suicidal thoughts and behaviors amongst a population of depressed patients with antidepressants. But I want you to think about the experience of looking at that probability. I sure as hell hope you're not looking at that and saying, I wonder what the ROC is. I hope you're thinking about what that probability means to you if you were that patient. Are you looking at it as a white person saying, wow, I had a high risk, good thing it didn't happen? Or are you looking at it as a green person and saying, geez, I got bad luck? We're thinking, given that we knew this information, why couldn't I get this information in my hands to have a better health experience for everybody? Okay, you guys can sit. Thank you for that. So here's the thing. What I learned from both of my parents is that there's a need and a reason why we need math and science, and we need to be able to produce objective data to make good decisions throughout the world. But there's also a need to experience things, to experience what matters and what's important, because that actually can drive the why behind the what an awful lot of the times. And if Francois Morellet can have this painting hanging up in the MoMA and captivate a crowd who just walk by to wonder about this experience, what's going to happen, why can't we as a community figure out the same way to captivate a community when Jenna shows this pictogram showing just exactly how we can actually predict suicidal behaviors in depressed patients? Or if Pete Mongeon can have this painting hanging up in the Tate showing composition C with red, blue, and yellow, why can't we look in Atlas and look at the tree map algorithm that we're generating and not just see it as the prevalence of diseases, but think about the experience that we're representing by showing the complexity of diseases across a population? This is the tree map of depressed patients. Those green boxes represent all of the difficult alternative choices that patients have to make. Every other box represents every other treatment that those patients are also wrestling with every single day to treat their own lives and to do as best they can with their own health care. This is data, but I hope that all of you actually can take the data and think about it in terms of the experience that it should bring you and the experience that you should be able to bring to everybody else. So when you're in Atlas and you're looking at a patient profile, I don't want you to say, wow, that's some slick JavaScript. I want you to look at a patient profile and think about the experience of that patient's journey. And think about the experience that you just had today, and think about how you can provide that experience and use that motivation to make sure that we're using a given individual's data with appropriate respect to deliver evidence that can actually improve their lives and the lives of everyone that they love. So you should be able to not just look at the data, but experience it. When you read the paper in PNAS that George led this community to develop, you saw cool sunbursts, and you can see this psychedelic rainbow. And you can think about the data of what it actually shows, but you could also experience this and experience what it means that so many patients with depression are sitting there with so many different treatment choices that there is a confusion on what to do in what order. And we have an opportunity to provide evidence that would actually help make their lives better. Or when Martine shows you this calibration plot that shows the possibility that as a community, and only as a community, could we generate the evidence for all exposures and all outcomes in a credible way, so that for the first time we're providing the totality of evidence that patients deserve to know about what's going to happen to them. That when you see this picture, you don't just say, wow, Martine is killing it with an R app, although he is. And you're not just seeing a whole bunch of dots scattered on there, but you're thinking about the experience of being a patient who's faced with a choice and working with their clinicians to think about the right thing to do. And think about the fact that most questions right now, there is no reliable evidence to inform medical decision making for a lot of decisions that patients really want to know. And yet we as a community have the opportunity to generate that evidence. We've demonstrated technically that we can do the data. We've demonstrated scientifically that we have the methods. We've demonstrated as a community that we can do amazing things. But what we need to do is experience the opportunity of generating this evidence for ourselves and for the rest of the world to have this be a difference. So what I want to leave you with is that I want you to be experiencing this journey, not just watching or joining, but I want you to be experiencing everything that we're doing together. So with that, I want to thank the sponsors for being here. Once again, it's amazing to have an event where we've brought so many people together, and it's only possible with the generous contributions of everybody who's been involved. I heard rave reviews about the food today, so that's exciting. The space seems like everybody had a seat that wanted one, so that is very great. The generous contributions of everybody who, all of these organizations who provide financial support, because it is just not possible to pull off something of this magnitude for the community without having generous contributions. And you can see here, it takes a lot of people pitching in to make this happen, so I thank all of you for doing that. I want to thank the organizing committee who helped to prepare today and the next 2 days' sessions. John, Melanie, Anna, Kristen, Lisa, Siegfried, Christoph, Andrew, Rohit. Together, these were the individuals who actually figured out how to try to make this day as beneficial for all of you as possible. We need and want your feedback to improve this even further, but I want to give these folks a round of applause because they did a heck of a job. The next 2 days, we've got tutorials being offered. We have a full day to learn about the Common Data Model and the standardized vocabulary. And they say it takes a village, and you can see that by the number of faculty members required to teach this course. So thank you, George, Christian, Erica, Karthik, Mui, Rima, Claire, and Don Squared. Population level estimation, thank you, Martine, Mark, and Christoph for leading a day of that tomorrow. On Friday, we're going to, for the first time, have a full-day course on patient-level prediction. So thank you to Peter and Jenna and Joel for leading that for the community. And we're also, for the first time, offering a tutorial, a full-day tutorial on the overall OHDSI development architecture. And so I want to thank Frank and Greg and Lee and Siegfried, who will be leading that session. Most importantly, I really want to thank Elisse and Maura, who are actually the people who do all of the work to make this possible. Maura is in the back there, and Elisse is back there, so please take a second to go say thank you to them, because this would not have happened without them putting all of the hard work into this. And most importantly, thank you to all of you for being part of our community, for joining this journey, hopefully experiencing it together. And I'm looking forward for this to continue to just be a step on our journey, not the end, but move forward. So just one more thing before I launch you off into a cash bar. We had a new collaborator join the community a few months back. Sean Williams is a renowned artist from Charleston, South Carolina. And I've seen many of his works, and I've been captivated by them. I even have a couple hanging up in my house. And I sat down with Sean one day to tell him about what we are doing as a community and the experiences that we're trying to do, because this is more than just about data. This is about the experience of patients and populations, and the feeling that we want everyone to experience when they think about that this is bigger than a SQL query. This is bigger than some R code. This is about the experience that we need to have to continue to be motivated to do what we need to do, and the experience we need to provide the entire healthcare system. And so Sean joined the community. We said that we would take anybody with any contributions possible, and Sean has prepared for us, I think, something that's a pretty remarkable contribution. So Sean, would you like to come up and share it with us? Throughout the reception, I want you guys to be thinking about our journey together as a community. I want you to be thinking about how to experience this journey. And I want you to take some time during this networking reception to check out the tremendous art that Sean has provided to this community, representing the data, but trying to give you an experience of what we're doing and why we're doing it and how we can help patients. There are 2 pieces up front here. There are 3 pieces in the back of the room. I encourage all of you to take some time to reflect on what we're doing and why we're doing it, to grab a drink, talk with your colleagues, and talk about the experience Sean is going to be here for him to share his perspective about what he's doing and why he thinks this is important. And I encourage all of you to share your perspectives with each other as well. So with that, I want to officially close the official part of day one of our OHDSI Symposium and hereby kick off our closing network reception. So thank you all for being here, and I look forward to networking and experiencing this journey with the rest of you today.